Why could the Commanders suddenly receive 2 third-round picks in the NFL draft? And is a recently fired head coach a dark horse candidate for the defensive coordinator opening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Full Command Show. My name is Grant Mitchell, back with you all on this Wednesday morning to talk about, guess what, more of the coaching carousel drama. As we know, the Commanders staff has pretty much materialized aside from a very large opening at the defensive coordinator position. So we are here to talk about that. There's also a current member of staff that could potentially be poached and used to fill a head coaching vacancy elsewhere around the league. That same vacancy could be used to fill the Commanders defensive coordinator position. And we've also got more updates on where different candidates are going, why a top rival was spurned by one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. There's a whole lot to discuss in this video. So everybody, make sure that you do have the like and the hype buttons pressed if you are enjoying the content. Subscribe if you're new around here, and make sure that you do throw your comments down below as always. So we'll start off by talking about the Commanders' running back coach and run game coordinator, Mr. Anthony Lynn. We got reports on Wednesday morning that he is going to interview for the Bills head coaching job on Saturday. Now, Lynn was a finalist for the job in 2017, but he ended up becoming the Chargers head coach. He was previously Buffalo's running backs coach, offensive coordinator, and interim head coach from 2015 to 2016. Personally, I would be surprised if the Bills didn't hire Brian Daboll or promote Joe Brady, but you know what? I've been wrong before about a lot of things, and I could easily be wrong again here. We'll wait and see what happens. Now, this would be a blow for the Commanders because he's really the only guy on that offensive staff with lots and lots of experience. He's been all the way up to being a head coach in the NFL before. He also knows David Blau really well, going back to 2021 when they spent time together in Detroit. But while it could be a blow, this is where the draft component comes into it. Because Anthony Lynn is a minority and he would be filling the head coaching position if he lands the job, but that's what he's interviewing for. If they hire him, the Commanders would receive 2 third-round compensatory picks. So 2 additional choices on day 2, which is pretty valuable. And it would stink to see Lynn go, but at least it's called compensatory for a reason. You would be compensated for it. Now, those picks are spread out across 2 years. They are in the upcoming 2 drafts. I don't know if that means 2026 and 2027, or if we're in the same cycle already as the draft, then it's 2007 and 2028. But if this happens, obviously when we get that information, I would come back to you guys and let you know. But what are your thoughts on that? Commanders potentially landing 2 compensatory picks if Anthony Lynn is hired to be the Bills head coach. Elsewhere around the league, I made sure to mention this in a video because I had a feeling it would be relevant, and lo and behold, not to toot my own horn, but I was correct. So the Packers lost their defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, to the Miami Dolphins. He is now their new head coach. The Packers have already arranged an interview with Jonathan Gannon for their defensive coordinator opening, of course, left by Mr. Whose name I just said, Jeff Hafley. They've arranged an interview for the DC job with Jonathan Gannon later this week. There's been very little noise about Gannon and the Commanders ever since that interview happened. There's been a lot of smoke about him going to Dallas. Now there's this Packers interview. I would assume he's out of it for the Commanders. That's just what I'm going to say. The Brian Flores smoke is also very heavily in the favor of the Steelers or the Vikings. Again, very little news, very little information about him and the Commanders. We know that him and Adam Peters are tight, but there's been all these stories about Mike Tomlin recommending Brian Flores, calling him the smartest guy in the NFL. Flores returning to the Vikings, Minnesota working very hard to keep him there. You're just not getting those same reports. And it could be a matter of the Commanders keeping their cards close to their chest, but agents get involved and they influence narratives and they infiltrate the media, and you're not hearing anything about, oh, look out for the Commanders. It's all, hey, he interviewed with the Commanders, but that's pretty much it. So I do think what's going to happen is I think the Steelers are going to hire one of Brian Flores, Mike McCarthy, or Chris Shula. If they don't hire Flores, he goes back to the Vikings as their defensive coordinator. He was interviewing for the Ravens head coaching job as well. I think that one's pretty much boiled down to either Jesse Minter or Anthony Weaver. So I think he's out of the running for those. I think Cliff Kingsbury's out of the running for those. I'm not really sure what's going on with Cliff. I thought he had a chance to land in Tennessee, but Robert Saleh is there now. So maybe he's the offensive coordinator in Tennessee. I'm not really sure what's up with that, but I will keep you guys up to date as we get more information. Continuing on here with the list of defensive coordinator options, Jeff Ulbrich, as we know, is staying in Atlanta, agreed to a 3-year extension with Kevin Stefanski. And there's just been no updates on, the Commanders haven't had second interviews with anybody. They haven't reached out for new interviews. And again, that could be because they're keeping everything close to home, close to the chest. But personally, I feel like the two options are Carl Scott and Patrick Graham. That's just where I'm at. I can only speculate. Maybe they're waiting for Raheem Morris as well, because Raheem Morris is not going to be a head coach. I know he's waiting to see if he can land a job. He's not going to get it. It's just not going to happen. So maybe they're waiting for Raheem Morris to have confirmation he's not getting those jobs, and then they're going to circle back and try to get him to be DC. So if we want to include him in the list of options, okay, we can. But if we do that, I think the three guys, again, would be Carl Scott, Patrick Graham, and Raheem Morris. Don't have inside information. Again, I've been wrong before, could be wrong again. But if it is one of those three, what are your thoughts? Let me know down below. Now, one person who just entered this mix and has not interviewed with the Commanders, there's not been any reported interest, anything like that, but it's somebody who I definitely wanted to bring up, Sean McDermott. So Anthony Lynn is on his way to Buffalo to interview for the job vacated by Sean McDermott. Obviously, McDermott was fired after the Bills flamed out of the playoffs again without reaching the Super Bowl, despite this probably being the most wide open that it's been for them in this Josh Allen era, right? Sean McDermott's a good coach. He went 98-50 as a head coach, so he won basically 2/3 of his games. Only had one losing season since being hired in 2017. Now, there is a long-standing connection between Sean McDermott and Dan Quinn, and kudos to you if you know why. So Dan Quinn's first coaching gig of his life was as a defensive line coach at William & Mary in 1994. Guess where sophomore safety Sean McDermott was playing his football in 1994. Yes, Dan Quinn was coaching the defense on which Sean McDermott and also Mike Tomlin, fun fact, were playing their football. So the relationship goes back a long way. That's what, 1994? So we're talking about 32 years or so. That they know each other. They might not run in the same circles, but they know each other. Since the Bills hired McDermott in 2017, their defense ranked 3rd in EPA per play. His units have always been consistent. Recently, there have been some flaws in the roster construction, not having a top-tier pass rusher. They've whiffed on a couple of first-round cornerback picks, and supposedly that led to a falling out between McDermott and the general manager, forget his first name, but last name Bean, Brian Bean, Brandon Bean, whatever. And ultimately, McDermott drew the short straw in that scuffle because the GM stayed around and McDermott was out the door. But I think McDermott is a very good defensive mind, and if all he has to worry about is the defense, I think he can do a really solid job. And he's got experience, he's proven. Again, his defenses were always consistent in Buffalo. So, to be clear, no reports of this. I'm just putting this out there based on the stagnancy, I think you can say, of the Commanders' defensive coordinator search, right? Again, no news of second interviews, no new candidates, nothing's happened. Things are happening everywhere around the league, but as of the last week or so, it seems like it's been a little slow here in Commanderland. So, stagnancy just makes me think maybe something's going on, and maybe that something is Sean McDermott. But if we get news of it, of course, I will tell you guys later, hopefully later today. I've been making a lot of double uploads lately, and if we get that report today, I'll be back right in front of you guys later today. Before I head on out of here, very important news for the Commanders and very positive in a sense. Mike McDaniel spurned the Philadelphia Eagles. Mike McDaniel, who we all know, relationship with Dan Quinn, former Miami Dolphins coach, great offensive mind, a genius, even if you want to go with that. McDaniel accepted the role as the Chargers offensive coordinator, where he's undoubtedly going to be excellent. Now, the Chargers got to beef up the interior of their offensive line, but Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, 2 great tackles. Justin Herbert, the quarterback, you got some weapons. You drafted the running backs, Jim Harbaugh. The Chargers are going to be really good. I have Justin Herbert as my dynasty fantasy football quarterback, so I'm really happy. I did just trade Ladd McConkey, but it was Ladd McConkey, a first and a second for B. John Robinson, so I'm still feeling pretty good about that. I feel like that's a win-win trade for all parties involved, especially since I still have Herbert in the offense, but I'm going off on a tangent here. This is important because the Eagles had Mike McDaniel circled as their top offensive coordinator choice, according to multiple reports. He turned them down, and there could be several reasons why. I'm not going to pretend like the Vic Fangio factor wasn't a deal, because, McDaniel fired Fangio when he was his defensive coordinator down in Miami. Fangio is like a legend in that building, in that city, for the turnaround that he's, not the turnaround, but for the job that he's done since he's arrived there and how great the Eagles defenses have been. So maybe McDaniel, maybe there was some sort of interpersonal tension that still exists. No clue. Maybe there wasn't. But what also had to factor into this was what he was going into. I don't know if he perceived it as coaching instability, Nick Sirianni being on the hot seat. Maybe it was an indictment of Jalen Hurts. Maybe he didn't want to deal with the headache of A.J. Brown. Maybe it was the offensive line's regression. But whatever it was, Mike McDaniel saw something that said, no, this is not the best place to be. Because McDaniel's been very clear. He would much rather take an offensive coordinator job where he can be successful to put himself in position to be a head coach again, rather than just go snap up any old head coaching opportunity or any old offensive coordinator opportunity. Now, with me saying all this, the Commanders fans should interpret this as a good thing, because the top choice said, no, this is not the place to succeed. So, long-term perspective, viewing it through the lens of looking at the NFC East, that's good for Commanders. It does also mean Mike McDaniel was open to becoming an offensive coordinator, and the Commanders needed an offensive coordinator. And Dan Quinn has this very strong, blood-like relationship with Mike McDaniel. So why would he say no? Why would that not have materialized? I've boiled it down to three possibilities. I wonder if the Commanders only thought that he would be here for a year and he'd do a great job and then he would get hired elsewhere. It's possible that they just think David Blau is smarter. They think David Blau is the guy. They think David Blau is the next genius. And it's also possible Mike McDaniel told them the same thing that he told the Eagles and the Browns and everyone else. No, it's not the place for me. It's not the place where I'd be most successful. Could be any of those three. But bottom line is, he's not in the division. That's great, because there's talent in the division. There are good teams in the division. John Harbaugh's already there. And while I don't think Harbaugh's going to win a Super Bowl, I think he's better than what the Giants have had recently. So we avoid having to play Mike McDaniel's offense twice a year with our defense that does need a lot of work. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure that you do hit the like and the hype buttons if you enjoyed. Subscribe again if you are new around here. We're on the road to 5K. Would love to get there before the draft and free agency and all that stuff. So join the team if you haven't already. Make sure you throw your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'm head on out of here, but I appreciate y'all joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day.
Chew with me.